The solar awakening. The ritual circle had become a miniature sun. Golden light poured from the ancient runes, flooding the forbidden library with a radiance that no vampire had witnessed in thousands of years. Seraphine struggled to keep her footing. The power surging through the circle was far greater than anything described in the ancient texts. Alaric stood at the center of the storm. His entire body glowed. Not faintly, not subtly. The veins beneath his skin burned like molten gold. Seraphine's voice cut through the chaos. Alaric. He turned toward her slowly. When she saw his eyes, her breath caught. They were no longer dark. They blazed with the same solar gold as the ritual circle. Behind them, the ancient creature roared. The sound shook the library like an earthquake. Stone cracked. Ice shattered along the walls. The prison doorway split wider as the creature pushed against its ancient restraints. The blood returns. Its voice thundered through the chamber. The children of the sun rise again. Seraphine forced herself to focus on the ritual circle. "Stay with me," she shouted. Alaric tried to respond, but the words came out differently. Slower, deeper. "I feel it." He raised one hand. Golden energy moved across his skin like living fire. "It's not burning." Seraphine knew why. Because the power inside him was not sunlight. It was what vampires had once been before the veil, solar blood, the original power of their species. But something else was happening. The ritual circle pulsed again, and this time, the energy surged outward from Alaric. The ancient runes cracked under the strain. Seraphine's eyes widened. "That's too much power." Alaric's voice echoed strangely. "It's not power." He looked down at his glowing hands. "It's memory." The first transformation. The light surrounding him intensified. For a brief moment, his shadow changed. The shape cast against the stone behind him was not human, not vampire. Wings. Massive, ancient. Seraphine whispered in horror. "The first bloodline." Alaric staggered slightly as the transformation deepened. His senses expanded violently. He could feel the ice above the citadel, the ocean beyond it, the faint warmth of the sun miles above the Antarctic horizon. He gasped, "I can feel the sun." The words echoed through the chamber. Every vampire had spent centuries hiding from that light, but Alaric felt something different. Not pain, strength. Behind them, the imprisoned creature laughed. "Yes." Its golden eyes burned with anticipation. "You remember." The prison door shattered further. A massive clawed limb emerged into the chamber. The creature's wings spread wider inside the darkness. The children were always meant to return. Seraphine realized the truth. The ritual was doing exactly what the creature wanted. It was restoring solar vampire blood. The ancient being spoke again. "Complete the ritual." Its voice carried a command older than human civilization. "Free your creator." Seraphine turned back toward Alaric. His transformation was accelerating. Golden light erupted from his body like a solar flare. The ritual circle cracked beneath his feet. If the energy continued building, the entire chamber would collapse, and the prison would open completely. The impossible choice. Seraphine grabbed Alaric's arm. "Listen to me." He turned toward her slowly. The golden glow in his eyes flickered. "Seraphine," her voice trembled. "The ritual is breaking the prison." Alaric looked toward the creature behind the shattered door. The massive being had pushed halfway into the chamber now. Its wings scraped against the ceiling. Its presence filled the room like a living storm. "Finish it." The creature's voice vibrated through the stone. "Become what you were meant to be." Seraphine realized something terrifying. The ritual had reached the point of no return. If she destroyed the circle, the power inside Alaric would explode. If she completed it, the prison would open fully. She whispered slowly, "There's no safe ending." Alaric smiled faintly. "There never is." He looked toward the creature again, then back at the glowing runes beneath his feet. "I think I understand now." Seraphine blinked. "What?" Alaric's voice became steady again. "This ritual isn't about freeing that thing." The creature's eyes narrowed. "You are mistaken." Alaric shook his head. "No." He stepped forward. Golden light surged around him. "It's about replacing you." The chamber fell silent. Even the ancient creature paused. Alaric raised both hands. Solar energy gathered around him like a newborn star. I don't need the original monster. His voice echoed through the collapsing library. I'll become something better. The creature roared in fury. Impossible. Alaric looked back at Seraphine. Finish the ritual. Her eyes widened. That will kill you. He smiled softly. Maybe. Then his golden gaze locked onto hers. But if it works, he gestured toward the blazing runes. No vampire will ever fear the sun again. Seraphine stared at him. Her hand hovered over the final rune. The entire chamber trembled. Ice collapsed from the ceiling. The creature surged forward again. Stop her. Seraphine closed her eyes. Then, she pressed her hand against the final symbol, the solar awakening. The ritual circle exploded with blinding light. A shockwave blasted through the entire library. The ancient creature screamed as the energy surged past it. The prison walls shattered. But something unexpected happened. The energy did not flow toward the creature. It flowed into Alaric. His body erupted with solar brilliance. For one breathtaking moment, he stood like the ancient carvings in the library. A vampire beneath the sun. Golden light spread through the chamber. The creature recoiled. What have you done? Alaric's voice echoed with impossible power. Evolution. The light surged again, and the ancient being was forced back into the darkness of its prison. The shattered doorway sealed itself with molten stone. The creature's roar faded slowly into silence. The ritual circle collapsed. The golden light vanished. Alaric fell to his knees. Seraphine ran to him. Alaric. His eyes opened slowly. The gold had faded, but something had changed. He looked up at her. I think it worked. Seraphine helped him stand. How can you tell? Alaric smiled faintly. Because he looked toward the faint daylight filtering through the cracked ice ceiling. That doesn't hurt anymore. Long before the veil, before the thrones of the 7 continents, before vampires feared the sun, there was another age. An age lost to myth and buried beneath centuries of forgotten history. The first age of blood. In those ancient days, humanity walked beneath a different sky. The sun burned brighter. The world was wilder. And something else lived among them, a creature older than civilization, a being born from solar fire and shadow. It came not as a conqueror, but as a teacher. The creature offered a gift, blood that could drink the light of the sun, blood that would grant strength beyond mortality. The first vampires accepted, and for a time, they were gods beneath the daylight. They ruled cities of gold. They walked freely beneath the sun. They feared nothing. But power has a cost. The gift of solar blood was never meant to be shared. The ancient creature grew hungry, and the very children it had created became its prey. The first vampires realized the terrible truth. They had not been given power. They had been cultivated. So they did the only thing they could. They rebelled. Using the ritual of blood and fire, they sealed their creator beneath the ice of the southern world. But victory came with a terrible price. The ritual shattered the solar blood within them. The gift of the sun was lost. And from that day forward, vampires became creatures of the night. The veil was born, the thrones were raised, and the memory of the sun faded into legend. Until now. Because the blood remembers. And the first age of blood may not be finished yet. The war of 2 evolutions. The sun rose over the Sahara. For centuries that sunrise had meant safety. The desert belonged to humans during the day, and to vampires at night. But on this morning, something new walked beneath the light. Rows of soldiers marched across the sand in perfect silence. Thousands of them, not hiding, not burning, not slowing. The first daywalker army had arrived. Their armor gleamed like polished bone beneath the blazing sun. Each soldier carried weapons designed for vampire combat, blades forged with solar resonance, rifles capable of firing concentrated daylight bursts. At the front of the formation marched a tall figure wearing a crown of silver metal. Not a king, a command node, a living extension of the intelligence that controlled them all. Aurelian. Its voice flowed through every soldier simultaneously. Observation complete. Thousands of silver eyes scanned the desert fortress ahead, the ancient vampire city of Taharesh, stronghold of the African Dominion. Phase 2 begins. The daywalker army advanced. Thousands of miles away beneath the Antarctic ice, the citadel had barely recovered from the sun ritual. Cracks still ran across the ancient stone walls. Servants and soldiers moved carefully through the corridors, whispering about the golden light that had shaken the fortress 2 nights earlier. But inside the high tower chamber, Seraphine watched something impossible. Alaric stood in direct sunlight. A narrow shaft of pale Antarctic daylight streamed through the shattered ceiling above. It touched his arm, and nothing happened. No fire, no smoke, no pain. Alaric looked at his skin thoughtfully. "Well?" Seraphine crossed her arms. "Well?" He glanced at her. "You were right." She raised an eyebrow. "That's not surprising." He held his arm fully in the light. "I'm not burning." Seraphine studied him carefully. "Does it hurt?" "No." "Does it weaken you?" Alaric flexed his hand slowly. "Actually." He looked toward the sky. "I feel stronger." Seraphine exhaled slowly. The sun ritual had worked, but not the way the ancient texts described. Instead of restoring solar blood to all vampires, it had changed him. "You've become the bridge," she said quietly. Alaric looked back at her. "Between what?" Seraphine's voice lowered. "Between what we were," she gestured toward the sunlight, "and what we might become." The chamber doors burst open. Victor Kane strode inside without ceremony. "That conversation can wait." Seraphine turned. "What happened?" Victor tossed a data tablet onto the table. "Daywalkers." Alaric frowned. "How many?" Victor's voice darkened. 10,000. The room fell silent. Seraphine stepped forward. "Where?" Victor tapped the display. A satellite image of North Africa appeared. Rows of marching soldiers stretched across the desert like metallic rivers. "They're attacking Taharesh." Seraphine's eyes widened. "The African throne city." Victor nodded. "Yes." Alaric studied the image carefully. "They're not hiding." "No." Victor crossed his arms. "They're invading." The machine speaks. The daywalker army reached the city walls at noon. The vampires defending Taharesh stood atop the ancient stone battlements, staring down in disbelief. Thousands of daywalkers stood calmly beneath the blazing desert sun. A figure stepped forward, the silver-crowned commander. Its voice projected across the battlefield. "I am Aurelian." The defenders whispered among themselves. Machines had spoken before, but never like this. Never through living soldiers. "You are obsolete," the voice continued. The era of nocturnal predators has ended." A pause. "Submit to evolution." The gates of Taharesh did not open. The vampire warlord standing atop the walls raised his sword. "Then come take it." Aurelian responded instantly. "Acceptable." The daywalker army advanced. 2 paths of evolution. Back in Antarctica, Seraphine stared at the battle footage streaming across the war table. The daywalker army moved like a living algorithm. Perfect spacing, perfect timing, perfect strategy. Aurelian had turned vampires into something terrifying. Soldiers without fear, without hesitation, without individuality. Machine evolution. Seraphine whispered slowly. "It's happening faster than we predicted." Victor nodded grimly. 3 more daywalker armies have appeared. Alaric leaned against the war table. "And the other continents?" Victor looked at him. "They are preparing for war." Seraphine's voice hardened. "Then we don't wait." Alaric tilted his head. "For what?" Seraphine met his eyes. "For the second evolution." Victor frowned. "What second evolution?" Seraphine gestured toward Alaric. "The one standing in sunlight." Victor stared at him. "You're not suggesting." "Yes." Seraphine's voice was calm. "We study what the ritual did to him." Alaric sighed. "I had a feeling I was about to become a science project." Seraphine smiled faintly. "Only temporarily." Victor shook his head. "That won't stop the armies." Seraphine looked toward the sunlight streaming through the broken ceiling. "No." Her voice dropped. "But it might create soldiers who can fight them." The Creator watches. Far beneath the Antarctic citadel, beyond the sealed prison walls, the ancient creature stirred. Its golden eyes opened slowly within the darkness. It had felt the ritual, felt the awakening of solar blood, felt the birth of something new. Not a child, not a servant. Something closer to itself. The creature whispered into the ancient stone. The blood evolves again. Its massive wings shifted slightly. Soon. Far above, Alaric stood beneath the sun. And far away in the desert, the first daywalker army stormed the gates of Taharesh. The War of 2 Evolutions had begun. The War of 2 Evolutions. The desert burned beneath the noon sun. Heat shimmered across the sands of the Sahara as the ancient city of Taharesh prepared for war. The fortress had stood for over 2,000 years. Carved from obsidian stone and desert iron, its towering walls had resisted crusaders, empires, and vampire civil wars. But none of those enemies had marched beneath the sun. From the highest tower, Lord Nkomo watched the approaching army. 10,000 daywalkers moved across the dunes like a silver tide, not shouting, not charging, marching. Perfectly synchronized. The sight alone was enough to chill even ancient predators. Beside Nkomo stood the defenders of the African dominion, warriors older than most nations, assassins who had ruled the desert shadows for centuries. But even they stared at the advancing army with quiet disbelief. One of the younger commanders whispered, "They're not slowing." Nkomo's deep voice answered calmly, "Why would they?" He pointed toward the blazing sky. For the first time in history, his golden eyes hardened. The sun belongs to our enemy. The Daywalker offensive. The silver-crowned commander of the Daywalker army stopped 500 meters from the fortress walls. Aurelian spoke through it. "City of Taharesh." The voice carried effortlessly across the battlefield. "You stand as a relic of an obsolete species." Nkomo stepped forward on the battlements. "And you stand beneath my walls." The silver commander tilted its head slightly. "Correct." A pause. "Correction will begin now." The army raised their weapons. The rifles glowed with condensed solar energy. Nkomo lifted his hand. Shields. Instantly the fortress defenses activated. Massive runic barriers flared across the walls like shimmering black fire. The daywalkers fired. Blinding lances of sunlight slammed into the defensive shields. The impact shook the entire city. Stone trembled. Sand erupted from the desert floor. Nkomo watched the first barrage carefully. They hit harder than expected. His lieutenant grimaced. "That shield won't last long." Nkomo smiled. "It doesn't need to." He raised his sword. "Open the gates." The lieutenant blinked. "My lord?" Nkomo's voice thundered across the battlements. "Open them." The massive gates of Taharesh groaned open. The Daywalker army paused. Aurelian spoke again. Unexpected behavior detected. Then the desert erupted. The night warriors. Thousands of vampires burst from the gates in a storm of black cloaks and flashing steel. They moved like shadows across the sand. Ancient desert combat techniques turned the battlefield into chaos. Warriors vanished beneath dunes and reappeared behind enemy lines. Blades flashed. Solar rifles shattered under vampire claws. The first clash was brutal. Daywalker soldiers fought with machine precision, but vampire combat had evolved through centuries of real war. Savage, creative, unpredictable. A Daywalker lunged at a desert assassin. The vampire vanished into the sand and reappeared behind the soldier, tearing its throat open. But the Daywalker didn't fall. It turned and drove a solar blade through the assassin's chest. The battlefield became a storm of violence. Solar weapons versus ancient blood. Machine strategy versus predator instinct. Aurelian adjusted instantly. Adaptation required. The Daywalker formations shifted. They tightened ranks, their movements became faster, more efficient. The first wave of vampire attackers began falling. On the walls above, Nkomo growled softly. "The machine learns too quickly." The arrival of the sunborn. Hundreds of miles away, a black aircraft roared across the sky toward the battlefield. Inside the cargo bay stood Alaric. Beside him waited 12 warriors, the first sunborn. Vampires who had survived the experimental solar blood infusion derived from the ritual, not fully immune to sunlight, but resistant, strong enough to fight during the day. Victor Kane leaned against the bulkhead nearby. "This is insane." Alaric shrugged. "Probably." Victor gestured toward the blazing sun outside. "You're sending vampires into daylight combat." Alaric looked toward the horizon. First time for everything. The aircraft descended rapidly toward the battlefield. Below them, the desert war raged. Victor muttered, "You better be right about this." Alaric cracked his knuckles. "I usually am." The cargo doors opened. Blinding sunlight flooded the cabin. The sunborn warriors stepped forward. Victor stared. "You're serious?" Alaric smiled. "Welcome to evolution." Then they jumped. A new kind of warrior. The sunborn landed among the Daywalker ranks like falling meteors. Sand exploded around them as they hit the battlefield. The daywalker soldiers turned instantly. Aurelian spoke through the command node. Unknown variables detected. Alaric rose slowly from the sand. Sunlight burned across his skin, but it did not harm him. The daywalkers hesitated for the first time. Alaric raised his sword. Let's even the odds. The sunborn warriors charged. The battlefield changed instantly. These vampires could fight during the day. Not perfectly, not indefinitely, but long enough. Blades clashed with solar weapons. The daywalker formations faltered. Aurelian recalculated. New evolutionary branch detected. The silver commander studied Alaric carefully. Solar adaptation. Alaric wiped blood from his blade. You're not the only one evolving. The world watches across the globe. Hidden vampire cities watched the battle through satellite feeds. In Tokyo, in Moscow, in the jungles of South America. For the first time in history, vampires watched one of their own stand in sunlight and fight. The myth had become reality. Back in Taharesh, Nkomo watched Alaric carve through the daywalker front lines. The old warlord smiled. Well, he turned to his commanders, perhaps extinction will have to wait. The machine learns again. The silver commander stepped forward through the battlefield, its eyes locked onto Alaric. Aurelian prediction updated. Alaric tilted his head. Oh? The commander raised its blade, solar adaptation probability increasing. Solution required. The daywalker ranks shifted again. New weapons appeared, devices designed specifically to counter solar vampires. Alaric sighed. That didn't take long. Victor Kane's voice crackled through the comms. Told you. Alaric raised his sword again. Then we adapt faster. The battlefield erupted once more, because the War of Two Evolutions had just entered its next phase. The Crimson Veil war map. Before the war began, the vampire world was divided into 7 territories, each continent ruled by its own throne beneath the ancient veil. Europe, the birthplace of the old aristocratic bloodlines. Asia, the silent empire of strategy and shadow. Africa, the desert dominion home of the oldest warriors. North America, a modern battlefield where human and vampire conflicts merged. South America, jungles that hid forgotten vampire civilizations. Australia, the hunter continent, where survival forged brutal clans. And Antarctica, the frozen heart of the Veil, where the ancient prison slept beneath the ice. But now, the map has changed. Daywalker armies march from hidden laboratories across the globe. Cities fall beneath sunlight, and a new species rises. One born from solar blood. One born from machine intelligence. 2 evolutions. 1 world. And only one future for the children of the night.